Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're exploring a truly monumental event in modern military history, the 1999 Kargil War, or as it's also known, Operation Vijay. Now, this conflict, it was an absolute test of human resilience, strategic ingenuity, and honestly, unimaginable courage. And it was all fought in some of the absolute most extreme, punishing conditions on Earth. We're going to look closely at the facts, the strategies, and the incredible human element of a high-altitude war fought between two nuclear-armed nations. Okay, let's dive right into this. We've got 6 chapters today. First up, the Kargil intrusion. Then, we'll look at the immense challenges of high-altitude warfare, followed by India's dual military response with Operations Vijay and Safed Sagar. After that, we'll break down the pivotal victory at Tiger Hill, the extraordinary courage of the soldiers on the ground, and finally, the lasting legacy of the conflict. Chapter 1, the Kargil intrusion. You know, what makes the start of this conflict so fascinating and frankly, so alarming is just how it began, totally cloaked in mystery and the harshness of winter. Basically, under the guise of Kashmiri militants, regular Pakistani forces covertly infiltrated across the line of control. They managed to establish themselves on the strategic heights of the Kargil district completely undetected. And if you look at the timeline, the situation escalated incredibly fast. It started on May 3, 1999, when local shepherds first reported some unusual movements up in the mountains. 2 days later, on May 5th, Indian Army patrols sent to investigate were ambushed, including a team led by Captain Saurabh Kalia, who were captured. At first, it was thought to be just a minor infiltration. But by mid-May, the true massive scale of the intrusion became clear. The intruders had captured over 130 vantage points. This triggered a heavy division-level mobilization of the Indian Army, and by May 26th, the Indian Air Force launched airstrikes. Chapter 2, High-Altitude Warfare Challenges. In the Kargil War, the freezing, rugged terrain was literally just as formidable an adversary as the opposing forces. This was a true David versus Goliath scenario, and not just in terms of true positioning, but man versus nature. Just look at this number, 18,000 feet. That is the altitude of some of the ridges where these battles actually took place. Fighting at this height, it completely changes the rules of war. The air up there is severely rarefied, meaning there's very little oxygen. This severely impacts human endurance, slowing troop movement to an absolute crawl, but it also messes with machines. Aircraft struggle to carry heavy payloads, and the natural trajectories of artillery and bombs are totally altered by the thin air. And as if the lack of oxygen wasn't enough to deal with, consider this staggering temperature. Minus 48 degrees Celsius. These are the kinds of temperatures troops were facing during the long nights. The physical toll on these soldiers was just unimaginable. They were battling frostbite and freezing winds, all while carrying heavy gear and trying to literally scale mountainsides. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive geographical disparity between the two sides. The infiltrating forces held the high ground. And in mountain warfare, high ground is absolutely everything. They basically sat in natural fortresses with a clear line of sight to target National Highway 1, which was the vital logistical supply route connecting Srinagar to Leh. On the flip side, the attacking Indian forces faced a severe logistical nightmare. They had to climb near vertical, exposed, freezing cliffs, all while under heavy fire. To dislodge a defender in those kinds of conditions, military strategists estimate you need a 6-to-1 ratio of attackers to defenders. Just think about the sheer scale of that disadvantage. Chapter 3, Operations Vijay and Safed Sagar. So how exactly did India respond to this massive tactical disadvantage? Well, they used a highly coordinated joint military strategy, utilizing both ground and air power to systematically reclaim those peaks. The air component was codenamed Operation Safed Sagar, which means White Sea. And this was historically unprecedented. It was the very first global high-altitude air war, fought at up to 18,000 feet. The Indian Air Force deployed MiG-21 and MiG-27 fighters, and later brought in French-made Mirage 2000 H-jets specifically to drop laser-guided bombs. Because of that rarefied air I mentioned earlier, standard ballistics simply didn't work. The pilots and engineers had to rapidly adapt, modifying their targeting indices and firing techniques literally on the fly to achieve pinpoint bombing against entrenched rocky bunkers. Let's look at how this all built into a cohesive strategy. You have the Indian Army executing Operation Vijay, mobilizing around 30,000 troops in the immediate conflict zone. Now, because of the narrow ridges, they couldn't exactly fight massive division-level battles. It was intimate, brutal, brigade and battalion-level combat. Meanwhile, the Indian Air Force, through Operation Safed Sagar, provided aerial dominance and relentless pinpoint bombing to flush out entrenched positions. This synergy was absolutely vital. The Air Force softened the targets and destroyed supply lines, which allowed the ground forces to actually make those agonizingly steep climbs. Chapter 4: Victory at Tiger Hill. We're now going to zoom in from that macro strategy to a specific micro-narrative, the battle for Tiger Hill. Because it was the highest peak in the surrounding area, it was a highly strategic and incredibly symbolic objective. Its recapture was really a textbook, step-by-step tactical escalation. Step 1 involved a massive concentration of firepower. Around 250 artillery guns, most notably the Bofors field howitzers, just pounded the peak alongside relentless airstrikes. Step 2 was the grueling ground assault. It kicked off on July 3rd, and it was so incredibly difficult that it required a multi-directional attack led by the 18 Grenadiers and later reinforced by the 8 Sikh Regiment, fighting through the freezing night. Finally, Step 3. By July 8th, the complete capture of the Tiger Hill feature was secured, marking a major turning point in the whole war. What's also super unique about Tiger Hill is its impact off the battlefield. This was actually the first battle in India to be telecast live. Thanks to the growth of electronic journalism, footage of the artillery fire and the harsh realities of this high-altitude war were beamed directly into citizens' living rooms. This live media coverage drummed up intense national feelings, deeply impacting public morale and really uniting the country behind the armed forces. Chapter 5: Extraordinary Courage and Gallantry. Now, what's really interesting here is that behind all the artillery and the aircraft, the ultimate success of Operation Vijay relied on the profound physical bravery of the soldiers engaging in brutal close-quarters combat. And I think this is perfectly captured by the iconic words of Captain Vikram Batra, "Ye dil mange more," which translates to, "This heart wants more." After successfully capturing point 5114 in a fierce close-quarters battle, he radioed this phrase back to his commander as a success signal. It just so perfectly captured the unyielding, relatable human spirit of the troops. Captain Batra later volunteered for another perilous mission at point 4875, where he rescued a fellow officer but tragically made the ultimate sacrifice, succumbing to enemy fire. Captain Batra was one of 4 truly brave men awarded the Paramveer Chakra, which is India's highest military decoration during this conflict. The other heroes were Grenadier Yogendra Singh Yadav, Captain Manoj Kumar Pandey, and Rifleman Sanjay Kumar. Each of these men exhibited superhuman bravery. We're talking scaling vertical cliffs under heavy machine gun fire, clearing enemy bunkers in hand-to-hand combat, and continuing to lead their men even after sustaining severe and in some cases fatal injuries. Chapter 6: The Legacy of Kargil. Following the capture of Tiger Hill and other key peaks, the 60-day conflict drew to a close in late July. But the historical and geopolitical aftermath of this war absolutely continues to reverberate today. Let's summarize the key takeaways here. First, the human cost was heavy. The official Indian death toll stood at 527 soldiers martyred, with over 1,300 wounded. Diplomatically speaking, India achieved a massive victory. By maintaining strict restraint and never crossing the line of control, India garnered widespread international support. Unprecedented international pressure from the US, the G8, and the EU ultimately forced Pakistan to withdraw its remaining forces. And domestically, the war prompted the formation of the Kargil Review Committee, known as the Subramaniam Report. This led to a massive, much-needed restructuring of India's intelligence framework to prevent future incursions. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. The Kargil War was the first direct conventional conflict between 2 nations that possessed nuclear weapons, fought in literally the most unforgiving terrain on the planet. So how does a localized, high-altitude war like this shape the future of modern combat in a nuclear age? It's a huge question, and one that military strategists are still analyzing today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.